There's a lot that Wall Street and the financial industry does for Main Street America, and I think the message has to be articulated better.
Hi, I'm Charlie Jaffe, and you're watching The Current. Today we'll be discussing the role of social responsibility in the financial sector with RBC executive Amy Sturtevant. But first, let's go to Allison to hear what students and professors have to say about the topic.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm Allison, talking to students about corporate social responsibility. But first, let's find out from a professor what this term really means.
The latest view has been offered by a group, international standards organization called ISO 26000. And they argue that corporate social responsibility is a set of responsibilities that ought to pertain to all aspects of business. They include accountability, transparency, human rights, business ethics itself, respect for stakeholders, respect for international law, and the like.
So, what do students think?
I think that values should play a primary role in what corporations and companies do. I don't think they're doing that now, or I don't think that the values that I think are important are being upheld by them now.
As it's set up right now, I think the only social responsibility of a corporation is to deliver a profit to its shareholders.
If they're too focused on satisfying everybody's value system, then nothing will get done.
They have to realize that they have a huge impact on people. They have huge consequences for many. So at some point you have to be aware of what you do and be responsible. I mean, it's ethical, and it's also just simple. You take care of what you do.
Well, I feel the only way that social responsibility can really be incorporated into businesses if consumers are actively not going to buy products.
I feel like the problem is that consumers choose the cheapest or best for them options, which companies can only provide by making the choices that are best for them on a personal level, which end up not being the most socially responsible choices.
The fact is we live in a free market, so as long as consumers aren't demanding values from the companies that they're interacting with, companies don't have any incentive to actually do that.
So I feel like there has to be a change at the root of the system where everybody, consumers and corporations, would have to prioritize values.
I'm here with Amy Sturtevant, Washington, D.C. branch manager of RBC Wealth Management. Amy, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So you're a seasoned professional in the finance world, which is something that many of us don't know all that much about. Enlighten us. What's the role of social responsibility in your line of work?
At RBC Wealth Management, like other financial firms, we obviously do a lot for the community through events, through corporate giving, and through supporting charitable causes. Something that we're focused on at RBC, and something that I'm focused on as a manager in a financial services company here in Washington, is promoting diversity. Having our company, our firm, our branch offices look more like the world at large and look more like our communities.
Zooming back out to the financial sector in general, it's a very fast-paced, evolving place. How is corporate social responsibility changing with it?
Well, mainly I think it's being paid attention to, and it's becoming a critical objective of not only RBC, but financial firms across Wall Street and Main Street and the world. We are focused on it. It is an objective. It is something that our firm discusses and talks about and comes through in action.
Obviously, Occupy Wall Street is a big deal. It's spread around the country, and there's a lot of public discontent aimed at the financial sector. What of their demands do you see as justified?
In my mind, what it comes down to right now is a frustration on young adults, college graduates coming out of these great schools, doing all this great work, and feeling that the world is their oyster and they can't get a job. And meanwhile, the CEO of some big corporation was just awarded a $110 million bonus. It's a culture, not only in the financial industry, but it's a culture in corporate America. And the idea that we push our leaders up, up the food chain, so to speak, and the big prize at the end is this gigantic bonus. You look at corporate boards of directors, and generally a corporation will go and put their board together, and they'll tap other CEOs of other corporations. All those people are it's all the same culture, so they're going to perpetuate it from a board level. if boards of directors started looking for other trustees to serve on their board, and they went deeper into the management of different companies, and not only reached out to more women, but reached out to other individuals that weren't necessarily the CEOs, I think that would bring a whole fresh perspective to the board level of these companies, and that could begin to change the culture of not only executive compensation, but change the culture of corporate responsibility.
At the same time, there seems to be a growing disconnect between the financial sector and many young Americans. Do you think that there's a lack of information here, or what context do you think that these people are missing?
I think the 99 versus the 1% issue that the Occupy protesters have brought up is valid. There's no question about it. But what I think not only the protesters but the communities out there need to understand is what drives our economy in this country and really around the world is small business. Small business makes up a huge percentage of our GDP. And that's what keeps the small towns going. It's what keeps the big cities going. And if it weren't for the investment banks on Wall Street, and if it weren't for the community banks that have the money, we would be in real trouble. And that is the part that can't be forgotten, that there is a place in the world for Wall Street, there's a place in the world for Washington and Congress, but we have to figure out how to make it work so that everybody understands what we're doing, and not only the bad things that we're doing, but the good things.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Amy. It's been extremely enlightening.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Before wrapping up, I'm going to go sit down with Allie to catch up and compare notes. So Allie, I just had a great interview with Amy from RBC. Can you tell me a little bit about what the students were saying?
Well, obviously students want to see a certain set of values. They want Wall Street to have morals. Nothing new. What I think is still very interesting is a lot of these people brought up the role of the consumer. And I think that too much blame is placed on these companies, whereas we as consumers, we live in a free market society. We have certain demands as a consumer, and we drive this market based on these demands.
So when you say consumer demand, how does this play out? What do you mean?
Well, as of now, we're not demanding values from our companies, so nothing's going to change. Take the environment, for example. 10 years ago, no one was talking about it. Now, people will not buy certain products if they don't have an eco-friendly label on it. I don't know, it's interesting talking to these students, but what did you get from Amy, Charlie?
Well, I think that the role of consumer demand is important, but some of the complaints that are coming from the financial sector, from Amy, from a lot of these people, is that it's difficult to create change from this sort of wide, touchy-feely demand of change. However, I think over time, it does work. You brought up the environment. These changes and these demands by the consumers over time change the incentive systems so that with businesses, it's in their interest to look out for the environment, to look out for the people. So I think that no, the CEOs of every big company aren't necessarily going to have this newfound passion for fixing the world, but I think that if the incentive systems drive them to act and follow it, that's all that really matters. That's our show. I'm Charlie Jaffe, and you're watching The Current.